Alrighty, I'm just going to make sure we are live here. Give it a good refresh. Alrighty, people are joining. Awesome. Make sure we're there. Okay, wonderful. We are live. Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for day 2 of the Boys Town Pediatrics Newborn Week. My name is Gabby. I'm your host for the week, and we have gone live yesterday and are going live every day this week to talk about a different topic as it pertains to you and your newborn. Today is very much a catch-all topic with newborn care essentials, so we're going to be covering lots of different things with Dr. Orr. And before we do so, I want to remind everyone that we will be doing a live giveaway. So if you're interested in winning a Welcome to the World first year bundle from Boys Town Pediatrics, make sure you like this video and leave a comment. You can comment anything. Let us know any questions you have throughout our discussion, comment your due date, anything you want really. And of course, if you don't want to leave a public comment, you can always message our inbox and we'll be monitoring that as well. And Dr. Orr will be joining us this Saturday at our in-person event too, so you can learn twice from her this week. And if you haven't signed up, that is above this video and also pinned in the comment section. So make sure to sign up for that. Dr. Orr, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. Great to have you on. Thanks so much for joining. So newborn care essentials, we'll go ahead and hop right in. What are the key elements of safe sleep practices for newborns? We talked a little bit about this yesterday in baby proofing, but we'd love to hear more thoughts on that.
Yeah. So the biggest thing and the thing you're going to care about most is laying your baby down to sleep on their back. So until they can roll over, usually happens around 4 months, sometimes between 4 to 6. We want them on their back every time when you lay them down to sleep. Once they do start rolling over and they can get themselves from their back to their belly or vice versa, then you can kind of leave them if they roll over. But you should always be laying them down on their back. Also, babies should always have their own space to sleep in. So a bassinet, crib, something with 4 walls. It does not have to be fancy. But we don't want baby in bed with you. They really need their own space. Anytime baby's in bed with you, there's just the risk of someone rolling over on baby or pillows or blankets getting in their face. And there's always that risk of suffocation. So it is always, always safer for them to be in their own space, in their own bed, something with 4 walls. We also recommend that nothing be in that crib or bassinet with baby. So you can have a fitted sheet on the mattress and then whatever baby is wearing or what they're swaddled in, but nothing else in that bed. So no stuffed animals, no fluffy blankets, no bumpers, which we really don't see very often, but definitely in our baby photos, you'll still see them and things like that. We just don't want them in the crib or the bassinet. We also recommend keeping that crib or bassinet away from windows. So if you have a nursery set up, we don't want that crib right up next to a window. Reason why are blinds and the cords that go on the blinds can be a strangling hazard for baby and things like that. So we want to pull them away as well. Pacifiers are actually good for safe sleep. A lot of lactation consultants will recommend that you hold off on pacifiers for at least the first 2 weeks until baby has a really good latch established because they don't want any interference with that latch. But once baby's latching well, pacifiers are perfectly fine, especially at night. They've actually been shown to help prevent SIDS. And then we also recommend that baby be sleeping in the same room as parents for at least the first 6 months. And again, that decreases the risk of SIDS. Just in case anything happens, you're right there. It also just kind of makes your life easier too, especially for those late night feeds.
I've seen before people share about the Owlet, the little foot monitor. Do you recommend those, or what do you think of that device?
I generally don't recommend them. I find that most of my parents, it tends to make them more anxious. So for oxygen level naturally fluctuate overnight, and when we are sleeping, it is going to go down slightly. Those outlets, if the baby kicks wrong, or if they're moving a lot, or if it's just not on correctly, it can signal a lot, which can make parents very, very anxious. I have some families that just kind of watch that outlet all night. And as much as people think that it's going to reassure them, I feel like it actually makes them more anxious. If your baby does have a medical issue, they've had low oxygen in the past or something like that, that might be a little bit different. But I would always talk to your pediatrician beforehand, because if we truly do need to be looking at their oxygen level, we might need a different machine that's a little more accurate.
Yeah, definitely. I see some questions coming through in the comments. Usually I will save them for the end, but while we're on the topic of sleep, this one we'll throw right in the mix. And that is, when is it safe to add blankets, stuffies, etc. into bed with baby?
I usually wait until they're a year or older.
Okay.
Just because I want them to have all of the motor skills in order to get out of those blankets or away from those stuffies if they need to. At 6 months, yeah, they should be consistently rolling over and things like that. But if they get trapped in those blankets, I still don't trust them enough to have enough motor control to get themselves unstuck. But by a year or after, they should have enough motor control for that. So I'm more comfortable with it at a year or after.
Yeah, great question. Let's talk about vaccination schedules. So what is the recommended vaccination schedule for newborns, and why is it so important?
Yeah, well, it's important because it keeps babies safe. When they are born, their immune system is brand new, so it's barely seen anything. And you build your immune system by seeing things more and more. But the only problem with that is that you're likely going to get sick every time you see something new, which is why when we send them to daycare or first time, back to us with a running last month. And so vaccines are really important to kind of give them some of these illnesses that can really do them a lot of damage, so that their body knows what to do to fight those illnesses without actually having experienced them. So most likely your baby will be right after born. Our vaccine you might get right after they're born, depending on the season and whether mom received the RSV vaccine. So when you're pregnant, moms will be for the RSV vaccine. If they get it, then baby doesn't get it. But if they don't get it for whatever reason, then baby's eligible for it after they are born. But it's only within the viral season. So there's a certain number of months in the year that that vaccine is available, kind of like the flu shot. And then at 2 months, they get their first full set of vaccines. So these would be things like DTaP, so diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, Hep B, Hib, polio, pneumococcal, which is our pneumonia vaccine, and rotavirus. And we try our hardest to decrease the number of pokes as possible. So within Boys Town, that set of vaccines would look like 2 pokes, even though I said all of those vaccines, 2 pokes, and then a liquid that they drink. And they get the same set of vaccines at 4 months. They also get the same set of vaccines at 6 months, just without the rotavirus, so without the liquid. It's important that they see multiple doses of these vaccines because we're building an immune system. So you can think of it as like bricks, and you have to build a wall. And so every dose that we give builds part of that wall, but we need that wall to be taller. And so every dose that we give helps them build that wall taller and taller so that they're more protected. And then they get another set of vaccines at 12 months. So there is a break between that 6 to 12 month for vaccines. They get another set at 15 months, and then another set at 4 months. And then they're eligible for the very first time for the flu shot and the COVID vaccine at 6 months. So prior to that, they're not even eligible for it, which is especially why we encourage family members to get the flu shot and the COVID vaccine during those winter months, because we can't give babies protection for those things. So the best we can do is kind of create a bubble of protection around them.
I know if you're watching, you might be thinking, this is a lot to keep track of, and just know that we will help you keep track of it at all of your appointments. And we have the vaccine schedule on our website too, so I'll make sure to link that after this video. But you don't have to remember everything when, and we'll help you keep track for your baby. So.
Yeah, and I usually try to remind my parents when vaccines are coming up so that they're not surprised at that next visit, especially when it's so frequent the first few months.
Right.
And so we will definitely talk about those vaccines, hopefully before the visit even happens. But then we'll talk about it again at the visit. Families also get papers on each of the vaccines, so if they have questions about them or want to go over anything, we can do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. The next question is, let's talk about bathing. How often, when, what products should we be using? Tell us more.
Yeah. So, bathing in general, babies don't need to be bathed every day. They're not very dirty, other than what they get on themselves from their diaper. So, they really only need to be bathed once every few days. However, if you like bathing your baby and baby seems to like bath time, that's perfectly fine. You can do it more often than that. They just don't technically require it. The other thing that plays a role in that, especially at the very beginning, is their umbilical cord and if your baby has been circumcised. So we want that umbilical cord to completely fall off before we do traditional bathing. The reason why is because I don't want that umbilical cord, while it's still attached to baby, to be soaking in water or submerged in water. So we do recommend just sponge baths for the first week and a half until that umbilical cord has completely fallen off. For babies who are circumcised, it's very similar. I don't want the circumcision soaking in water, submerged in water. So we do recommend sponge baths for the first 2 weeks on any baby that has been circumcised, because it takes about that long for that circumcision to fully heal. And then once that umbilical cord's gone, the circumcision's fully healed, you can go ahead and do traditional baths. I do recommend using sensitive products, so things without scents or dyes, ideally. Even if it says it's for a baby, if it has a lot of scent in it, I recommend avoiding it. Just because their skin is so sensitive at that age, that the more products with scents and dye are just more likely to irritate them and cause issues.
I've seen talk on social, so I wanted to ask you, but what is your opinion about bathing baby in the sink versus the tub?
Um, I don't have a strong opinion on, as long as taking the same precautions. So you still want to make sure that the water temperature is appropriate, whether it's the sink or the tub. You still never leave baby alone
Mm.
or the tub. You need to support them. Um, and as long as you know you're making it a safe space for baby, I
Yeah.
find tub or sink.
Okay. Yeah, I've been seeing stuff where people, maybe their kitchen sink wasn't totally clean after they prepped chicken or something. So then there's a salmonella risk. So I don't know if that has ever happened, but that you
I
know.
I've never had it occur for any of my families or friends that have bathed in sinks, and I know quite a few have in the past. But yes, that would be part of making sure your environment is making sure that anything pokey is put away, that we've cleaned the area really well, that we haven't just prepped meat in that. So if you are wanting to use it, would just make sure that everything is very clean, and keep it safe.
Yeah. So are there some other common mistakes that parents might make with newborn hygiene?
I think the biggest ones are, again, the scented products or the products with dye in them. And I think partly that's not your fault. It has the words baby on them. Expect them to be safe, appropriate for baby. but that's not always the case. So those, I see those a lot, avoiding them. And then a lot of additives to the bath, especially when they're real little. We don't need things like bubble bath or bath bombs or things like that. Again, there's just so many additives to those things that your baby is much more likely to react to them. Then it's just remind my family to leave baby alone in any water for any of time. They can drown in a very, very small amount of water. So we really need to be safe around any amount of water, and they should never be left alone.
Yes, perfect. We've got about 4 more questions on our list here for Dr. Orr. So if you have a question on newborn care tips, make sure you leave it in the comments to be entered into today's giveaway, which we'll draw here at the end. Okay, so we talked a little bit about baby's umbilical cord stump. I know last live we got quite a few questions on umbilical cord, circumcision, for any little girls out there, making sure that their private area is very clean. Do you have tips to share around that?
Yeah, so like I said, the cord will last about a week to a half. If your kiddo's umbilical cord falls off before that, do not freak out. That's perfectly fine. It probably got caught on something, which while it's attached, I want you guys to kind of just leave it alone. And the more dry you it and the more you just leave it alone, the better. I also recommend that all my families, when they do their diapers, they fold down the very top of that diaper so it sits under that umbilical cord, put the diaper on. Otherwise, you'll notice that a lot of the time, most diapers will fold over that umbilical cord, and we want to keep it clean. So folding it under that umbilical cord means that everything that baby's doing in their diapers stays under the umbilical cord and doesn't get on it. We don't recommend the umbilical cord. That used to be a recommendation a while back. We don't recommend it anymore. The more you can leave it alone, the better, to be honest. Things to watch for: if it becomes red or swollen around it, seems tender when you touch it, or baby starts having other symptoms like a fever, then I recommend having them come in and having your pediatrician look at it. The other thing I remind a lot about the cord is that when it does fall off, it might drain a little bit of your yellow fluid or a little bit, and that can be normal. We just don't want it bleeding through outfits, and we don't want it being more than a couple days. So it really should be a pretty small amount. So if it's more than something, then always pediatrician, but don't be surprised if you do see a little bit of blood or a little bit of fluid. For those circumcisions, like I said, it's to fully heal, create like a yellow film around it as it heals. So a lot of my kids get nervous that the yellow film is an infection. It's just healing skin. But again, if you have questions, please reach out to your pediatricians. We get these questions all the time, so no one is going to be upset or surprised by those questions. And then the biggest thing for circumcisions is, again, keeping it dry those first 2 weeks. Don't submerge it underwater, and then applying a ton of Vaseline to that area. Probably an excessive amount. You're going to think it's an excessive amount, and if you think it's excessive, then you're doing it correctly. You just want that healing skin to adhere to the diaper, because then every time you change that diaper, you're peeling off that healing skin and starting everything new. So the more Vaseline, the better. I will warn that when you put the Vaseline, you put it in 2 spots. You can do it on the incision itself, or you can do it on the diaper. When we get it directly on the diaper, because some of my families do think it's just easier to get it on the diaper than the actual circumcision, which is perfectly fine. We just don't want it sticking. It makes the diaper a little absorbent.
Okay.
And so every once in a while, especially during those first 2 weeks when you're applying so much Vaseline, the diaper is not quite as absorbent, so we tend to have more leakage. Baby pees. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't mean your diaper is not working. It's just because of the Vaseline, and it'll get a lot better once we don't need it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And then any tips for little girls in making sure their area is hygienic and clean?
Yeah, so the biggest thing for little girls is making sure that we're wiping front to back. Uh,
Mhm.
is a thing that I know as women we are told a lot, especially growing up, but we have to remember that our new dads, probably have not heard of this. Um,
Right.
and so not to single them out or anything like that, but it's just a different anatomy.
Yeah.
Uh, so reminding them and really educating them on front to back and why it needs to be front to back. Also, grandparents could use sometimes. And that's probably the biggest thing. We just don't want to be pulling things forward that we don't need in that area. But other than that, a whole lot, unless you're in from either the diaper or the wet wipe, which again, some kids do react to some of the diapers, either the dyes in it, some of them have, different products to make it. So other kids have no problems with diapers, but if you're noticing a continued rash or something like that, I do recommend trying a different diaper and just seeing if that helps. Same with wipes. I recommend using wipes with any type of scent in them. And some of them will even have like alcohol in it, which stings, have like a rash or anything down there. So I do recommend using more of like just the pure wet wipes.
Mhm.
That's mainly just water, just the water wipes. Um,
Mhm.
those to be more effective and less irritating.
Yeah, that's a great tip, especially because I know oftentimes when people are expecting, they can stockpile diapers or wipes in preparation. And so that's good to know that, you might have a bunch of one kind. And then once baby comes, oh, that one's not quite fitting or working for them. So we might have to switch brands. Just something good to be aware of. Awesome. Okay, we just have two more questions and then we'll go ahead and hop into the Q&A. If anyone else has remaining questions, please leave them in the comments and we'll get those answered. Let's talk about nails. How can parents safely trim their newborn's nails?
So I recommend not trimming. I recommend filing. Um,
Okay.
so it drives me nuts because in all of the little like baby bath packs, you will get a little nail trimmer. Just throw
Don't
it.
you? Yeah.
These are born, their nails are really, really, they're not the same consistency as our nails really at all. And so if you try to trim them, tend to actually pull on them or even get the top of their finger. So it's a lot safer to just file their nails. If you feel like you're filing constantly and we're still having issues with scratching, the next best thing is just mittens, like
Mhm.
over their hands. Socks also work. Sometimes they stay on better. But yeah, file, never clip.
Yeah, that's good to know. Perfect. And then lastly, here on our list, do you have any newborn care product favorites that you want to tell us about? Your tried and true, trusted, the ones people come in the clinic and say work really well for them, or is it kind of more preference?
Um, some of it is preference. I mean, I have the things that I tend to recommend or like, but so what works for one kiddo may not work for another kiddo. So like the diapers and things like that, you might have to switch products to if he's having a reaction to one kind of diaper, you might have to try a different kind. Again, the water wipes are what I recommend. They're what happens in my family when we have baby showers. I just buy the pure water wipes um,
Mhm.
because I figure that can't cause any irritations, just water. Um, any lotions without scent or dye. Again, I feel like I'm harping on that, but I try to avoid any products with any scent. So there is one baby product a lot, and even that I just try to avoid it.
Mhm.
Detergents, so any detergents that are scent or dye free, uh,
Mhm.
they're that is really um, lean towards. But honestly, most brands have a center dye-free option, and as long as you pick one of those, that should be fine. And most of my family, I've had families try the majority of them, so they seem to work pretty well across the board. Yeah, I think that's about it. I don't know anything more than that, but
The one I'm thinking of, I know we've talked about before. I don't know your thoughts. I think it's Frida Mom or Frida Baby makes the booger sucker. Do you recommend having that on hand or anything similar in your kit?
yes. So the nursery will give you a bulb to go home with that you can suction out their nose with when they're congested. I do like the nose Frida.
Yeah.
Have them in our clinic as well. I don't know if all of the clinics do, but we have an option. We have a nose Frida option here that we sometimes hand out to our families. But that is something I do recommend for my families. I do have families though that say that's disgusting and they just won't do it. So again, it's preference, but I do think the nose Frida works a little bit better than the bulbs personally.
Perfect. All right, we have one question here in our discussion. If you're watching later tonight or maybe over the next couple of days and you have a remaining question on newborn care essentials, leave them in the comments and I'll send them to Dr. Orr. But the one we have right now as we're live is, when do you start filing their nails?
Um, there's not a specific time. Most of my families, I feel like, start pretty quickly after they're born. You will notice that they tend to start to scratch. Just don't have a lot of control, and they're still learning how to move their hands, and learning that they have hands. But you'll notice some of my babies will have like little scratch marks from just their hands and their nails. So they tend to start pretty quickly. So I from the beginning and then kind of see how your baby does. If you're not noticing a lot of scratching, you can kind of leave them alone. But definitely if you're noticing that baby's getting themselves or getting you, go ahead and file them.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so before we draw for the giveaway, I don't think I mentioned this yesterday, but we do these daily giveaways, but then we also have a grand prize giveaway. So all of the comments that we get throughout the week, we will add up together, and that's going to be a newborn photo shoot from our community partner, Nikki McClay. So make sure that even if you are like, oh, I didn't win today's giveaway, keep commenting throughout the week because we'll enter them all into the grand prize. So today's winner is Nicole A. Congrats, Nicole. We'll go ahead and send you a message, and thanks for watching live. Perfect. Well, Dr. Orr, this has been wonderful, and like I said, really kind of a hodgepodge of discussion questions here with newborn care, but we really appreciate your time and all your expertise. Awesome. Well, thanks, everyone. Make sure to tune in tomorrow. We'll be live with Dr. Danielle Empson, and that topic is going to be feeding, which is always a good one to listen in, whether you're breastfeeding or formula feeding, combo feeding, any of the above. We'll be talking all about that tomorrow at noon. So we'll catch you then. Thanks, everyone.